Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this DevOps.com program, brought to you by Techstrong, AWS, and Kong. My name is Cody J. Brown, and I'm the host of Techstrong Learning. We've got an exciting program ahead. First, I need to cover just a couple of housekeeping notes. So today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion, or maybe you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you have any questions, we want you to send those in to us using the Q&A tab. You can find the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen, and that's also where you'll find the chat tab. In the chat section, that's where we want you to get to know your fellow audience members. Let us know your thoughts throughout today's program, or maybe just from where you're joining us. And of course, before we close out, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around for the duration of today's program. So the title of today's program is Managing Multi-Region and Multi-Platform APIs with Konnect and AWS. And I'm joined by Degui, Senior Solutions Engineer at Kong Inc., and Akash, Head of FSI Specialist Architects for APAC at AWS. So Degui and Akash, thank you both so much for joining me. Would you like to take it from here?
Thanks so much, Cody. Maybe I would let Akash go first to do a quick intro.
Sure, Degui. Hello, everyone. My name is Akash, and I lead the Strategic Financial Services Technology Initiatives across APJ. And I'm excited today to talk on how you can run Kong on AWS along with Degui. Over to you, Degui.
Hi, Degui here. I'm based out of Singapore. I'm part of the solutions engineering team in Kong. So I work a lot with our customers, prospects, and partners. Today, I'm very honored to work with, actually co-present this topic with Akash. We have been collaborating a lot on the solution together over the past few months. Globally, we have actually a lot of joint collaboration and so on, right? So today, we have actually put some agenda together. So we will start with some problem statements first, right? Basically set the stage, like what we see the general trend in terms of the growth in APIs. We will share from both Kong and AWS perspective, right? Of course, Kong is focused on API and connectivity. AWS has a broader coverage, offering a wide range of services, right? And especially Akash has a lot of experience in FSI, so we will talk more from that perspective. And then we will introduce our solution today, mainly our Konnect. It's actually our service connectivity platform. We have the solution basically based on open source, and then we have launched a SAS platform. And then the next part is naturally, right, why Kong on AWS, right? What are the unique value proposition? What are some of the integration and the collaboration, we have done together. And then with that, we'll talk about some reference architecture, some technical details, and we want to show you a live demo to basically, so that to visualize whatever we talk about when we say multi-region, multi-platform, how does it look like using Konnect on AWS? And we will probably will keep 10 minutes for Q&A, right? Probably I'll go first to start on the problem statement, right? So Kong basically focus solely on APIs connectivity. So we work with actually more than 500 enterprise customers worldwide, right? From different industry, this is the trend we have seen. APIs and microservices continue to increase exponentially. We see a continued investment and year-on-year growth for we see more than 100%, right, in terms of API, and then primarily driven by microservices development, right? So this is all based on CL survey from McKinsey and Gartner research. So basically, it's important for enterprises to keep up with this, right? So basically, if they don't keep up, if they they don't keep up, then they will fall behind their competition, right? Or they will miss the market opportunities if they don't do that. So probably just to use a diagram to illustrate the problem we are facing, right? So the bubbles here are systems. As we know, over the years, we have seen major systems being built, right? and then larger systems being deployed. And as organizations moving towards microservices deploy in containers, hybrid clouds on AWS, we just see increasing number of microservices. As the number of microservices increase, so accordingly, there will be more and more connectivity problems, right? So these are the challenges we see our customers are facing, right? Security, reliability, performance, right? Access control. So all these are becoming just more and more critical as you build in more and more microservices. So this is what we see. These are the problems what Kong is trying to solve. Maybe let's also like to ask Akash, right? Akash, you also work with a lot of clients in Asia Pacific, primarily from financial services market. So what do you see as some of the key drivers in the growth of APIs?
Sure, Digvi. So what we are seeing is, as part of digital transformation, customers are building microservices layers and exposing them as APIs to build omni-channel experiences. And customers are also getting rid of legacy systems and using various ways to move functionalities to cloud. And one of them is strangler pattern, where you move one functionality at a time to the newer platform and slowly strangulate the legacy system using an abstraction layer, and that is exposed as an API. And in the last few years, we are also seeing tremendous growth of SaaS-based software vendors, and they usually provide their offerings using APIs. Last but not the least is regulations. So in some countries, regulation requires financial institutions to open APIs. For example, open banking regulation in UK and Australia require bank to open APIs to third parties, right? And a similar ask has been made in multiple countries to open APIs for energy and telecom sectors. So it's not only financial services, but other sectors are also opening APIs. And this all adding up into the growth of a lot of APIs, API-driven microservices.
Yeah, thanks for the additional context. I think in this webinar, we'll take open banking, open finance as example, and then share a reference architecture, right? A more detailed diagram to illustrate, how these two solutions, can work together. So with this problem statement, right, from Kong, we offer an end-to-end service connectivity platform. So this platform basically has two main components here, right? One is what we call a control plane or management plane. It's basically a single pane of glass for you to manage, no matter where you deploy your workload, your runtime, right? Whether you have APIs running on EC2 or you are actually building new microservices on ECS or EKS. And then we also have customers who actually prefer to run maybe a PaaS on AWS, right? So OpenShift solution running on AWS. So the control plane, of course, we support a self-managed mode, and we also offer a SaaS model. Right? Next slide. I will explain what are the differences, right? With SaaS model, basically means you don't need to manage all the components, right? In terms of the monitoring, in terms of management, developer portal, you don't have to deal with HA configuration. You don't have to deal with like disaster recovery, and also it will remove the upgrade burden from the customer, right? So whenever we launch a new feature, right, that feature will be made in the cloud and then available to the customer immediately without customer having to do a major version upgrade or have to schedule downtime, right? Actually, our platform supports zero downtime upgrades, but usually the banks will have a very stringent change control process, right, to make things very difficult. So in terms of the runtime, because we do end-to-end services connectivity, so it's more than just API gateway, right? So API gateway is well understood by most of the people, right? It's usually used to manage the north-south traffic, right? For the inbound traffic from the external customers or partners. It can also manage the outbound traffic, right? Like Akash mentioned, the example of a SaaS solution. When you are calling external APIs from SaaS, that is a kind of egress traffic that can go through the gateway as well. And we start to see more internal traffic, right, being managed. It could be, say, you are running containers on EKS, right? You can run Kong as an ingress controller in your EKS cluster, and you can also deploy a service mesh, right, to give you that end-to-end services connectivity and zero trust security. So to bring this further into the AWS context, we share a few possible options to run the platform. So maybe you can actually look at a more detailed view how when our customers are running their applications in different kinds of AWS infrastructure, so how Kong can actually manage this. So maybe I'll let Akash explain a bit here, since you are the AWS expert. There are quite a number of offerings from AWS. Akash, do you want to walk us through the different options available? Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, thanks, Digvi. So Kong Konnect can seamlessly integrate with Kong data planes deployed across multiple platforms on AWS. For example, on AWS, you can choose container orchestration technologies or deploy it on an EC2 instance, right? So you have a choice of both the platforms. And if you choose container orchestration, then we have further choices. You could use Elastic Kubernetes Service, EKS, which is our managed Kubernetes platform, or you can use Elastic Container Service, ECS, which is Amazon's opinionated solution for running containers at scale. And you can also go ahead with Red Hat OpenShift ROSA offering. So you have choices in terms of using container orchestration technologies, EC2, if you are using, if you have your workload on AWS. And on the other side, if you have a hybrid setup where you have your own infrastructure, then you could use Amazon EKS, ECS anywhere. So with Amazon EKS, ECS anywhere, it allows you to create and operate Kubernetes clusters on your infrastructure, whether it's a bare metal or VMware vSphere. And you could also use Kong data planes on Outpost. So the choice is wherever you are, on-premise, hybrid, or a cloud, AWS gives you choice to deploy Kong data planes across these platforms.
Yeah, thank you. And in the demo later, we'll actually show you from Konnect control plane. We're going to manage the data plane. We choose EC2, ECS, EKS. I think they are very representative of a different mixture of different options. And then we can see how the policies can be consistently applied no matter where the APIs or the policies are being enforced, right? Thanks, Akash. And maybe I just want to also take the next slide to explain maybe some benefits, right, with the SAS platform. Of course, you can run Kong Enterprise in fully self-managed mode, right? One option could be you actually manage everything in AWS, right, including deploying your own control plane, right? So actually, many customers do that. So now we offer a SAS platform, right? So the control plane is SAS-based. But you still manage the data plane. The data plane is very lightweight, right? I'm going to show you how you can quickly deploy a new data plane connecting back to the control plane, right? Usually, it's the control plane that is usually more complex to manage. And as I mentioned, there are more applications that you can deploy to the control plane for analytics, right? For developer portal and so on and so forth, for collaboration. So that's where we want to really innovate fast and then ship new apps, right, to our customers. So we see a lot of value by providing a SAS-based control plane. So these are the benefits that we see, right? If you see the dark blue boxes, these are some of the unique features, right? If you're using a SAS platform. So as we mentioned, right, of course, your data plane can be deployed anywhere, right? Usually wherever your applications are running, you deploy your data plane, right, for best performance, for better security. So now our control plane is available. Today is available in US and EMEA, right? Is coming to APJ. So we will have a global control plane. So no matter where you run your application, you can choose the region that is closer to the data planes, right? And as mentioned, right, because it's a SaaS platform, you have a fewer components to manage, right? You don't have to worry about disaster recovery, right? You don't need to manage your own database, backup, archiving, and so on and so forth, right? And then the version upgrade is something I mentioned. It could be, we also take away that challenge from you. So you still get all the benefits like automation, right? All the high performance, all the extensible plugins and so on, right? From the data plane. And also the monitoring, right? So in demo, I'm going to show you can actually aggregate all the performance and logs into a central location. So you can actually have full visibility, right? No matter where you run your application, you actually have a single view how the APIs are performing, right? You can monitor the traffic, right, to look for certain potential attacks and so on. And then it's actually more secure, right? So I think Akash will talk about this more, right? When we explain why Kong AWS. It's one of the reasons why customers use a cloud or SaaS platform is that actually it's more secure, right? Because it's being managed by the experts like AWS. So they have been doing this day in, day out, right? So they actually take care of all the security measurements and the compliance and so on. But when you manage your own infrastructure, there could be things that you probably miss out certain configuration, right? You didn't patch certain components regularly, and then it leads you into some security vulnerability. So we will talk about that when we explain why call AWS later. And since today we talk about multi-region, multi-platform, so I think we covered multi-platform, right, where you can run Kong anywhere, no matter what is the AWS environment, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud, whether it's container-based or VM. So we have this in Konnect, we have this multi-tenancy concept, right? So this actually mapped to the multi-region and multi-platform, right? So basically, in a large organization, you can consider maybe this organization operates in multiple regions, right? So they have businesses in US, they have business in Europe or APJ. So they probably will say prefer to have a global control plane for the operations within United States, another global control plane maybe in the Europe for the Europe operations. So for the same control plane, they can also further create another kind of isolation using what we call runtime group, right? So here there are two examples, right? So runtime group can be used to separate, for example, between development, test, and production, right? So basically you can always develop your APIs, test them, right, and then deploy. You can promote the configuration from one runtime group to another one, right? So everything will be tested. It's just another runtime group where it will be running. So you have the confidence that the same API policies have been already tested in the same configuration, right? Another way to use runtime group is you can also do that by different business units, right? Taking banks as example, they could be maybe one bank merged with another bank, or there's a joint venture now as part of the merger and acquisition. Now they have basically for the same consumer banking business, they have two groups, right? So that is pretty common. Or maybe you have a consumer banking, you have SME, you have a corporate banking, and so on and so forth. So now they usually, I mean, they probably don't want to share their own the application or data. You give them individual runtime groups so that they can manage the role-based access control, their own configuration, runtimes, and so on. So within each runtime group, they have the freedom, right? The architecture freedom to say, okay, one group maybe my systems is a bit relatively legacy, right? So I probably want to do a lift and shift first, right? Running a VM. Another group is maybe a digital team, right? Everything will be microservices, container-based. So they will say, I'm going to use EKS for my APIs and so on. So give them the freedom, right? The autonomy to run their application, right? Based on the need. So, and as I mentioned, right, the data plane can run anywhere. So of course, data plane come with a multi-region support naturally. That's thanks to AWS. So in terms of the control plane, we actually now support two regions, right? So this is the Konnect interface I'm going to show you later. So once you log in, you can choose between United States or Europe, right? So we have two regions. APJ will be coming soon. So this is really allows our customers to meet data residency and regulation requirements, right? So we also have done a lot of engineering, right, to ensure that we give the best performance so that we minimize the data replication, yet we want to make sure that if there's any critical in policy changes, or if there's a new user, we want to make sure that the changes will be synchronized, yet they can be independent, right? Of course, You can find more details in the blog post that explains how we actually manage this, right? Two different regions. When we add in another region, we'll work in a very similar manner, right? So this is the kind of issue, right? We take this away from the customer. So now you don't need to worry about like DB setup, DB replication, right? This is all, you just log in, get the accounts. You can just start deploying like your data plane, right? And get your onboarding your APIs already, right? So we'll really shorten the time to market and also make sure that it's actually more secure, because we will engineer its parts and make sure that it's all taken care of in terms of security and high availability. And just some highlights of the Konnect capability. I think a lot of this actually inherit from our gateway, right? But of course, we add in a lot of extension. There's a lot more benefits you can get from the application, but from the policy enforcement, actually Konnect is very extensible, right? Many of these policies can be enforced within Konnect itself, and sometimes they will be actually be extensible to integrate with external service. So just take authentication as an example. If you use OpenID Connect, right, for example, we are going to show you can easily integrate with identity providers such as AWS Cognito, right, because it's actually compliant with OpenID Connect. So we can just turn on the plugin. Okay, now you have your applications API deploying AWS. Now you can also secure the API access using Cognito, right? So you can manage all your users, your the policies and the lifespan of the token, etc., within Cognito. And also, we can actually manage the secrets, right? So, for example, if you don't want to manage the credentials, the certificates in Kong itself, where we store in our own database, you can make use of the external secret manager. So here we support AWS Secret Manager. If you prefer to use HashiCorp Vault, right? So that is actually supported as well. This is actually was a tech preview in the previous version. Now is made GA, starting from version 3.0. And so there are many other extension points. So probably we'll look at the different integration and also demonstrate integration with Cognito. And also actually another integration we have done in the demo is that we will store all the logs, right? Aggregate all the logs no matter where you run your data plane, and store all logs to AWS OpenSearch, right? So you can analyze the logs and create dashboard based on that. I think I talked a lot about what Konnect is capable of. Maybe let's change. Probably also, I think this will be a question people will be interested in is, okay, Kong is actually platform agnostic, but why Kong AWS, right? What are the unique value proposition or differentiators? Maybe I'll again, Akash, again, you are the expert here. I will let you explain. You will definitely explain this better than me. Yeah.
Sure, agree. So there are two parts to this partnership, right? One is how AWS is the best place to run Kong, and the second is how AWS and Kong are jointly working together to make customers successful in API implementations. So let me start with the first one from a technology point of view. So we have 80 availability zones across 25 regions that you can use to build highly available, scalable, and reliable APIs using Kong data planes. And then you can optimize cost and performance by using Amazon's Graviton instances. So these Graviton instances are ARM-based instances built and designed by Amazon to provide up to 40% price performance benefits over comparable current generation x86 based architectures. So you get performance and cost benefits. Third, I think we talked about it, that there's a rich container portfolio covering the Kubernetes orchestration or Red Hat OpenShift or Elastic Container Services. And I think the fourth one, which is very important, right? So native integrations, which reduces a lot of development and deployment time. So with AWS and Kong, we have 20 plus native integrations. And for example, with Cognito, with OpenSearch, and Digby is going to show you in his demo how easy it is to integrate with these services. And then moving on to the deployment, right? So you could choose deployment of your choice. If you are expert in CloudFormation, you can use CloudFormation, Terraform, or kind of CDK, CLI. Based on what you are comfortable with, you can go with any of those tools to deploy Kong on AWS. And then you also get, so security is a shared responsibility, right? So the infrastructure part, when you run workloads on AWS, you inherit a lot of compliance accreditations which AWS have as part of your workload. And it is easy to provision Kong through marketplace from a procurement perspective. And finally, the other part of support, right? So AWS and Kong are heavily invested together in terms of partnership and helping our customers. So we have dedicated builders from Kong and AWS who are deeply invested in the partnership, lets you architect, deploy, and run your APIs frustration-free. Right? And Kong is a differentiated software partner in AWS partner network, qualified with multiple competencies such as DevOps competency or ISV workload migration program. So it is not a one-off thing. We are working very closely on kind of helping Kong run on AWS plus in various customer engagements as well. Over to you, Degvi, to add further points.
Yeah, I agree. So in this demo will show a few integration out of the 20 plus. So yeah, so with this, I guess of course this combination can be applied to any industry, right? API is needed not just in FSI space, right? In retail and in manufacturing. So everyone needs APIs to drive internal digital transformation or expose API to work with their partners, right, or the end users. So, okay, so I think since Akash, again, right, you are the experts in the FSI space, we can probably take a look at one example, right, how this can be applied. Say, by taking open banking as example, right, how this Kong and AWS can work together to support this. So probably we can start with maybe just a functional requirement, right? Is platform technology agnostic. Yeah, you want to talk about this? Yeah.
Yeah. So let me define open banking first, and then we will go into the functional architecture. So open banking is about banks sharing their data via an API to accredited third parties, right? And let us see how the functional architecture will look like for this use case, and then how it will translate to AWS. So let's see, if you can, yeah. So when we have to build an open banking architecture, usually banks start with what are my core systems in terms of system of records, payment gateway, or cards, and then I will kind of build microservices on top of it to expose customer profile, kind of a microservice or transaction or any aggregation required, which clubs these core systems. And then I will have enabler functions for open banking. One is consent management, right? Open banking consent management is very important to get consent from customer before sharing the data. Identity provided for authenticating APIs, and then storing all the API performance data to share with regulators, and then develop a sandbox for third party to build APIs. And on top of this, you would put a gateway, right, which will have API management capabilities, authentication, authorization, throttling, routing, right, and DDoS protection. And this API gateway is used to expose to channels, which are your mobile application, web application, partners, and regulators. And with this foundational, then you require peripheral kind of functions from a DevOps perspective and monitoring perspective, and then analytics, right? Once the data comes in, how do you analyze the data? So this is a broad functional architecture of how you would build an open banking functionality in a bank. And there are two key aspects to this architecture. One is API gateway, where Kong comes in and then provides all this functionality. And then you build microservices and using multi-platform technologies. You could use container, you could use EC2, you could use Lambda. Irrespective of whatever you build in a microservices layer, you could kind of connect to the Kong data planes. And with this, let us see how does it translate to AWS architecture, right? And if you have a look at it, it's a comprehensive architecture. And let me drill down a few things here. So it's a multi-account AWS architecture where you have the networking account, where we will have the Kong data planes running under a VPC, integrated with the web application firewall for added security, and it will be exposed to the channels and third parties and regulators, right? So, and then from these data planes, if you come down, we have an open banking account. It will have the microservices layer, and here the same microservices which I talked about customer profile, transactions, and you would use a Kong ingress controller to kind of expose these microservices for further security. And there will be other supportive services from DevOps, analytics, security perspective, which we are not covering as part of this discussion. And then you have Kong Konnect, where the control plane is, and I will let Digvi talk more about it and take it further.
Yeah, so I think this basically mapped back to the high-level diagram we shared previously, right? But a more detailed view of exactly where the components will be sitting. So this is, as I mentioned, it could be in a container platform or VM, but the high-level idea is that usually there will be one layer of gateway sitting in the networking account, because usually there could be external-facing traffic, right, working with the external third-party or regulator. Internally, while you're building microservices, you also use either gateway or ingress controller. So this is usually applied to a Kubernetes platform like EKS. So ingress controller can be actually internal gateway that manage the communication. So one part we have not drawn is the service mesh, but definitely you can also do that by injecting a service mesh as a sidecar. So now all these will be managed because the data plane is very lightweight, right? It's just a single container. It's super easy to deploy and upgrade. So now all the policies will be managed here, right? Konnect Cloud actually it also runs on AWS, by the way. So underlying infrastructure is AWS, but this Konnect Cloud is managed by Kong, right? So basically, it's a control plane with we keep adding new apps here. So today we have the Runtime Manager. You can manage the different runtime group we just talked about, right? The different runtime instances you deploy on different platform. There's a developer portal, service hub to register your APIs and allow, collaboration, analytics. So this will basically, as a SaaS platform, right, allow us to build more apps easily without like waiting for say 3.1, 3.2 releases, right? We can actually innovate faster in the cloud. And another thing we'd like to call is the automation part, right? Whether you are using self-managed or Konnect Cloud, the way to actually manage configuration is basically through DevOps. So basically, again, take AWS as example. You can use co-commit, co-pipeline. You can check in all your declarative config, your open API spec, and other Kubernetes manifest file, right, in your repository. And you use the pipeline to basically drive the automatic deployment of the configuration through the control plane, and then the data plane will get the latest policies from the control plane. So everything can be automated. You can also build in like a certain validation testing, right? So once you deploy, you want to make sure this everything is working fine, right? If necessary, you can also like do a backup or rollback and so on. Everything can be automated using the DevOps tool. Okay, this diagram looks a bit busy, but it's pretty easy to understand. But we do want to give you the next level of details, right? In summary, is really about the two solutions integrate very well, right? We actually have a very tight integration with the AWS ecosystem, different services. So with that, probably we can move on to the demo, which is a simplified version. For demo purpose, let's keep it simple for now. But we want to emphasize on the key ideas here, right? So we'll use Konnect Cloud. We are going to connect to 3 data plane. So just for demo purpose, I just provision one EC2 instance, one ECS cluster, one EKS cluster, right? I have the data plane deployed there. And I'm going to configure some APIs. And we can turn on security, say, okay, now we want all the APIs to be secured behind AWS Cognito, right? So we can turn this on, turn this off. And basically the configuration, I'm going to walk you through, explain how this can be done easily. And now we can also aggregate. Yes, we do actually have our own monitoring dashboard here, analytics. But we understand in some cases, customers prefer to also collect more detailed logs, right, for further analytics. So you can actually, here we integrate with OpenSearch, where all the data plane will be sending logs to the same OpenSearch, where you can create your own dashboard, you can do your own analytics, and so on and so forth. So this will be the demo setup. So let me just switch over to okay, so first I will start from the Konnect Cloud interface. We have a link later we'll share if you are interested. You can actually sign up for a free trial, launching the Konnect from AWS Marketplace, or you can actually go to Konnect, the cloud.conhq.com, do a free sign up, right? But the free trial is offered through AWS Marketplace. So basically, this is a SaaS platform. So like I said, right, SaaS platform basically means you don't have to set up the control plane, or you get an account, right? Log in, you basically see the interfaces. So there are a few tabs here. Okay, my session time now. Let me just log in. So again, this is actually integrated with our Okta, right? So we have single sign with Konnect. Well, So this is a Konnect interface, right? So there are a few things like I explained. So Service Hub is for you to register your services, and if you have multiple versions, right, you can actually register them here. You can publish them onto Developer Portal. Developer Portal is basically a way to publish API documentation, and you can customize the look and feel of your own portal, right? You can choose a theme, and then basically allow developers to look at the API documentation. They can sign up and do some testing with the APIs. Okay, so yeah, again, this is integrated with a single sign, and then analytics, right? So this is the off-the-box analytics. So I'm going to show you an example where we can actually ship the metrics and logs to a solution like AWS OpenSearch. So this is the Runtime Manager I mentioned, right? So again, multi-regions, as I mentioned. So right now I'm connected to US region. We have a Europe region. APJ is coming soon. So this is the region for the control plane. So now we have multiple runtime groups. So these are like different teams, right? So each one can work on their own. So I have my own runtime group for my own environment, right? So this is like my own team and department. And data plane, again, even though I'm using the control plane in the US, I can actually run my data plane anywhere, right? So these are basically, I have an EC2 instance, ECS cluster EKS. Okay, if you want to add new runtime instance, it's straightforward, right? Launching a runtime instance is pretty easy. Just say I want to launch a new instance. So if you're running a EC2 instance, so what you do is you can say I'm going to provision a Linux VM, right? And then we'll say, okay, now I have a VM running. I can just go through a few steps here, right? I just need to install the basic library, get a certificate is secured by MultiPlatform, and then I just need to update a few properties here, right? So it's a vanilla install. It's pretty easy to understand, right? I'm setting the role of my Kong gateway as a data plane. Since I'm going to connect to the control plane in the cloud, I don't need database, right? So you see database is turned off. You don't need to worry about database setup. So we are connecting to the control plane. So this is the address, right? So if your network does need to allow certain address. So this is the address that you probably need to allow that the data plane to connect to, right, to the external world. So this is a control plane address, and then we also have another endpoint for telemetry data. And then you take the certificate here, and then basically we'll use the certificate to establish a mutual TLS communication. That's it, right? So you get a data plane run up quickly in a few minutes running on EC2. So if you're running on ECS, right, usually what we do is we'll generate a kind of a Docker compose file. So that's just one way, right? So you can actually deploy that in the ECS. Then if it's EKS, we can actually do the preferred way is a Helm chart, where we already give you a values to YAML file where you can just take and then do a Helm install, right? So all these just take like probably a few minutes to deploy, and then you will have all the all the runtime, as mentioned, right? You can get the data plane all started up, and then they will try to connect to the control plane and then get the configuration. So that is what you're seeing here, right? So let me just close this. So here you will see I have 3 instances connecting to my control plane now, all right? So I can do some basic testing, right? So for example, I have a route here. So this is basically, so probably I can show this diagram a little bit here. The API traffic goes through, will be hitting where the data plane are running, right? So usually they will be fronted by a load balancer, right? So so now in this case, right, traffic actually goes through the data plane. So even if there is some communication between the control plane, data plane can continue to run, right? So they actually will cache the configuration locally. So they actually continue to run even if there's actually some network issue between the communication, but usually that shouldn't happen because everything actually runs on AWS. Okay, so now if you look at this is my EC2 endpoint IP address. I can actually make a call. So this is actually a service I configure, right, called rate limit. So this will lead to the next part where we can actually set up policies, right? So this, you can get the same experience, right? Whether you are hitting EC2, so this is the load balancer address for ECS cluster. I have another load balancer ELB for ECAS, right? You get the same response. So now we can actually set policies. For example, we can actually apply a rate limiting policy. So if we actually go back to the interface here, we have a different services registered, right? So this is a rate limiting route I'm testing. So here you can actually say, I want to set up a rate limit, right? And then you can look at the configuration and so on. And if you want to apply other policies, you can say, I want to add another plugin, right? So this plugin basically allows you to quickly protect your services. So things like authentication. So I'm going to show you an OIDC integration with Cognito very soon. So there are many different ways to authenticate the service, okay? And you can also turn on other security capabilities such as IP whitelisting, blacklisting. You can actually use OPA for fine-grained access control. You can do, of course, rate limiting, caching, and so on. So these are basically the policies that you can just enable. And now with 3 different data planes, all the policies that you enable will be applied on the all the 3 different environments. So let's take the Cognito as an example, right? So here we have one service here. I just created one called OIDC Cognito. So this is actually protected behind OpenID Connect using Cognito as an identity provider. So OpenID Connect is a common standard, right? So basically it's pretty easy to configure the plugin, right? Just need 3 parameters. Maybe just let me go to the AWS console here. So if I go to Cognito, yeah, I actually have created a pool here. And we get this, right, by creating a client. We basically just need to take the client ID secret here. Now I'm making the access token valid for 3 hours. You can shorten it, right? So it's a value between 5 minutes and a day. And basically, these are the 2 key parameters to basically authenticate Kong, right? To establish the connection. And then we just need to specify the address, right, for the IDP. That's it, right? So that's the 3 parameters you need to set to establish this communication. Maybe just to show you before and after effect, right? So if I say, okay, I'm going to turn off this plugin, I'm going to disable it, right? So if I make a call to the OIDC Okta route, okay, I don't need to pass in any credentials, right? So I'm going to remove the bearer access token from the header. So anyone will be able to access, right? I don't need any token, so they are not protected. Okay, this is not secure, right? Now I'm going to enable it. Now I want all my services and routes being protected by the same IDP. So if I do this again, okay, you see it's almost immediate, right? Now once I enable the policy, I cannot access the route on EC2. Same policy is being applied on ECS. Same thing being applied on EKS. So what I need to do now is I need to get an access token from the, so this is again the AWS Cognito service. I'm getting a token from the endpoint here. So let me just clear this, right? So I'm using the client credential grant type. I'm passing in the same client ID secret. I create a scope. So now let me just get a token. So this token, as I configured, 3 hours. So it's it will expire in 3 hours. This is configurable in Cognito, right? And the access token is actually in a GWT format. So you actually can look at some of the claims. So this information will be actually useful if you want to say, I want to pass on some information in the header. I want to maybe check certain scope, right, for further authorization. So those things can be done as well. Okay, now I'm going to take this token. Okay, by the way, I'm using a tool called Insomnia. This is basically an API design and testing tool, right? If you want to use this to design API specification, you can do that. And then you also come with the test feature. One very convenient feature, right, for example, is that you don't have to copy and paste the token into the request. So basically, I'm using a basically environment variable, right? I'm going to read the response from this particular request, right? I'm getting access token. I'm trying to get this access token using the JSON path, right? And you will actually give me the value. Now I can just simply insert the value into my bearer token into the request header. So once I enable this, you can see now the access is being granted. The authorization token now come with a valid token. Now this request can pass through, right? Same thing, right? If I pass the same token, it's a kind of single sign-on, right? The same token can be used as long as we're using the same IDP. Now I can access ECS, EKS, and I will, okay, I forgot to enable it, right? I need to enable as long as the token is attached to the request. Now I'm able to access the APIs, right, no matter where the application is running, okay? So this is on the first part where I demonstrate, right, different data plane. Now I'm using Cognito as IDP to quickly protect the APIs, right, to make sure also achieve kind of single sign-on, right, with the same access token. You can get access to all the different data planes. So the last part I want to demonstrate is the observability, right? So now you have data planes running at different places, but while we do have some analytics information in the cloud, maybe you want to actually get more details, and maybe you don't want to send all the detailed logs over to the control plane, right? Or because performance or because of data privacy issue, you prefer to send logs locally in your own login server. So in this case, I'm using OpenSearch, right, from AWS. So the configuration is pretty straightforward. I have configured a plugin. So by the way, the plugin can be used to do many different things, right? One of the function that plugin does is to actually do login and monitoring, right? So we add in OpenTelemetry supporting version 3. So you can also turn on and get the detailed tracing traces information from the request. So you can actually turn on login, right? This is the one that I'm using. So basically, I will send all the logs to OpenSearch. So if I go back to the plugin, I have enabled a TCP plugin. I make this plugin global. So basically, it means all the plugin, all the API requests, right? We will capture all the logs, no matter what is the service route or consumer, right? So basically, we want to monitor everything, what is going on. And here I have a very simple configuration. I just need to specify where is the data collector, right? So again, I'm using a EC2 instance. Basically, this is a Logstash service to serve as a data collector, which will be sending data over to OpenSearch. And while I was doing some requests just now, if I go to, yeah, I think I already have that open, but let me just show you quickly. I have an OpenSearch service configured here. And if I go to this service, this is my Kibana dashboard. And I should be able to see the logs, right, over the last, during the webinar itself, over the last 1 hour. You can see there are some requests coming in. now I can store these logs for a long time, right? I can say I want to see the data over last 24 hours, the data over last 7 days, right? So you can see the total traffic that comes in. And the logs capture, of course, detailed information. You can see there's a long list of attributes that's being captured, right? The detailed request header, response header, which service they're calling, and so on and so forth. And then with this information, you can also customize a dashboard, right, to visualize it. So let me just say, okay, I can see last 7 days, maybe just last 24 hours. So I can see, okay, my platform is not very busy. It's more of a demo. It will be really interesting if you have a real transaction going on. So you can see, right, most of the requests are okay. Actually not really. There's some errors, right? Like, for example, I try to make a service call without passing the token. I get 401 errors, right? I can monitor the throughput, the latency. I can see which service is being consumed more. I've been testing mostly Cognito service. You can see it come up as the top, right? So it'll be interesting if you have APIs, and then if you do measure consumers, you can actually see who are the most active users actually calling the API. So I probably just want to wrap up the demo. Yeah, it's just a very high level, just really to illustrate the concept we try to cover. There's a lot more details that go into the different components, but just want to maybe keep it simple at this level. Hopefully, it helps to explain the concept when we say multi-region control plane and multi-platform data plane, and then with a deep integration with AWS services. So with that, I think I'll just end my demo here. I think we have about 9 minutes for some Q&A. I'll probably pass this back to Cody.
Great. Thank you so much, Degui. So I'm looking through our questions, and let's take them from the top. How easy is it to deploy Kong on AWS?
Yeah, I can take that first, and maybe Akash can add on. So as I explained, right, when I launch a data plane, so basically we will generate the config for you, whether it's a VM install, right? It's just one package. We just run a yum install, for example, right? And then with the config that we already generate for you, you can start a launcher instance. And then for Kubernetes, we have Helm chart. Again, everything is created for you. You just need a values to YAML file, right? Fill in the right values, right? Run one command, it's up and running. There are actually more options available, right? If you want to automate everything, I think Akash, in one of the slides you mentioned, you can also use CloudFormation, you can use Terraform, you can use any other tools that you want to automate the process. One part we probably didn't have time to cover is that we can integrate very well with all the CI/CD tools, right? Even not just about provisioning, right? If you want to manage configuration, you can have a CI/CD process actually to automate that part as well. Yeah. Akash, do you have anything maybe you want to add?
I think you covered most degree. The flexibility you get where you could use tool of your choice while deploying, and there are already code available to deploy it automatically. Whether you use CloudFormation or Terraform, whatever tool of choice you have, I mean, you could use to deploy it. So I think it's super easy to deploy it.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you both. So what can you say about Kong's performance on AWS?
Yeah, Kong's performance on AWS is great. Maybe I'll just share quickly one report. Let me share screen one more time. So because it's the best to show an actual report. So we have a third-party report. Can you see my screen?
We can.
All right. So this report is done by a third party called GigaOM, and so basically in this report they compared 3 solutions, right? Kong, basically we are talking about the data plane here, right? So this applies to Konnect Cloud as well, RPGX and MuleSoft, and this test was conducted in AWS environment, right? So I think it's kind of let me just go to the diagram to illustrate. So basically, this is the actual results, right? Running the same application, same load tests, right? with Kong data plane, with APGX, with MuleSoft. This is the kind of throughput we get, right? So Kong can achieve up to 54,000. I think we are talking about 8 CPU core. Yeah, it's mentioned here. I think is so 4 CPU core, 8 GB of RAM is it's actually a very small setup, but with a very small machine, we can actually achieve up to 54,000 TPS. While APGX, right, Java-based solution, they only achieve less than 2,000 TPS. So it translates to, right, Kong is basically highly scalable, and also actually it basically means you don't need you will need probably more you can use more AWS resources to run your application, but not necessarily, right, to run the gateway. Gateway should be very light. And then another parameter I want to call out is the latency. So under the same load test, Kong data plane maintain sub millisecond, right? So 1.4 millisecond latency, right? But the other solution actually go up to almost like additional 1 second just on the gateway alone, right? Not to mention the heavy lifting that need to be performed by the APIs and application. So this is actually a lot, especially in the microservices world. One business transaction can involve multiple APIs. So you can imagine these numbers add up, right? The total transaction probably will take very long to process. So Kong latency is much lower. So I thought this report is very useful. I can paste the link in the chat window. You can actually read about the details. It was conducted in AWS. Yeah.
And just to add on, so on AWS you have choices again to run with x86 instances or Graviton instances, right? And Graviton are ARM-based processors designed by Amazon, where you get up to 40% price performance benefits. So I mean, you could use those kind of instances and then again improve your performance and pay less.
Thanks. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Our next question reads, any recommendations or best practices for working with Kong on EKS and app mesh?
Oh, okay. EKS and app mesh. Okay, so I think in the slide, even though we didn't go into our mesh solution in details, API gateway and service mesh can run independently, right? It's more of architectural patterns where you want to really secure services end to end with gateway and service mesh. So basically from architecture point of view, you can use Kong as a gateway. You can also use Kong as a mesh if you see fit. Having said that, right, you can always use Kong as a gateway or ingress controller. You can choose to use AWS App Mesh. I mean, both of our solutions use Envoy anyway as the sidecar. So I think that both integrations are possible, really depending on the requirements. You see whichever is the best fit, you can do that. So that is more on the App Mesh question. EKS, I think, is very straightforward, right? Kong, as I actually showed in the demo, Kong can be deployed easily in EKS using Helm chart. One thing we have not demonstrated is that actually Kong can run as an ingress controller. It's another deployment approach. Native integration with Kubernetes, right? You deploy Kong natively as an ingress within EKS itself. Akash, do you have anything to add for this question?
I think you answered this very well. Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
All right, well, Degui and Akash, thank you both so much for joining me. We do have about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes left on the air, so I did just want to give you an opportunity to say anything to the audience that you'd like to leave before we close out.
Yeah, I just want to share this slide. Yeah, I think we can share the link in the chat window as well. So we are running this free trial, right? So you can get Kong Konnect Cloud up and running from AWS Marketplace. You can take a screenshot, get the QR code. I think, Cody, if you can help to also paste the link in the chat window. If you do have any questions related to the content covered today, if we are not able to cover everything, you have my contact and Akash contact. Please reach out to us. Happy to have some follow-up session to answer any questions we are probably not able to cover today. Yeah, that's all from my end. Akash, any final words you want to say?
No, I think this is wonderful. I'm super excited with this partnership and how Kong is kind of helping a lot of customers in building very robust API platforms, and looking forward for further customer engagements. And if you have any questions, reach out to us and we will be happy to support.
Yeah. And finally, I just really want to say thank you to Cody for facilitating this session. Really appreciate it. Staying up very late in your time zone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah. Sure, of course. And thank you both for taking the time to join us. I would like to remind our audience that the session was recorded. So following this program, you'll receive an email with a link to access that recording on demand, or you can find the recording living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and just be sure to look in the on-demand section. So we do still have those 4 $25 Amazon gift cards to give away. Our 4 winners are Ruben G, Sue T, Petronilo G, and Igor M. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your email inbox to claim that gift card, but if you don't happen to see that email, please check your spam folder. So to AWS and Kong, thank you so much for sponsoring today's program. And to our audience, we really appreciate you taking time to join us as well. We will be popping up a survey on your screen as soon as we close out, so we really appreciate your participation there. But otherwise, we hope to see everyone at an upcoming Techstrong Learning program. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. And Akash, Degwi, thank you once more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.